please welcome Ben O'Neill.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Dan, for the invitation to come here. And I'm not going to be the main speaker. I've got my colleague, Jason Schwartz, to speak. He is the curator at the library, so he knows more about history than certainly probably all of us in this room. So feel free to ask him any questions. And we're opening a special exhibition that he's going to tell you about. We're also doing a lot of patriotic programs over the next 12, 14, 18 months. Celebrate 250th anniversary of the Marines and the Navy in the fall, and obviously a big July 4th celebration next year. So I'm happy to tell you more about those initiatives after Jason tells you some about this exhibit, which will have some pretty incredible artifacts. Jason.
Hello, everybody. Oh, lovely. My name is Jason Schwartz. I'm the Director of Research and Exhibitions for the Richard Nixon Foundation. Just quick background. I don't know if I know the most about history of anybody ever. Those are big shoes to fill. But I definitely, love history. Went to Cal State Fullerton for my undergraduate, Chapman alum for grad school. While I was there, everybody sort of has like a niche that they kind of carve out. So I was a Cold War foreign policy guy, and I was especially interested in kind of the pivot from the containment doctrine, which is a specific history term, to the Nixon doctrine, and kind of how American policy changes sort of in the shadow of Vietnam as far as the expectations. It was there that I did a lot of primary research at the Richard Nixon Library, as well as the LBJ Library. There's usually the museum apparatus on top, and then underneath that is the National Archives, where the actual records of the government are kept. At the Nixon Library, we have 46 million documents, all of the Nixon tapes, I think 100,000 hours of film. It's obviously, a wonderful resource, and it's there where I kind of like fell in love with primary research. And then from there, begat all the way to Director of Research and Exhibitions.
Gaps in the tape, by the way?
Yeah. You're asking dangerous questions. So outside of our permanent gallery, which is obviously, the life and times of President Nixon, we have a special exhibit gallery that we rotate about once a year. Usually, thematically, we will go on topics that are like, people enjoy kind of nice, round historical numbers, 25th anniversary, 50th anniversary, et cetera. We just did a series of 50th anniversaries of the Nixon presidency. And really what we like to do is kind of take a topic that we touch on in our permanent gallery, but develop it out in a kind of a more meaningful way. Right now we have an exhibit on the Middle East that kind of starts with the ancient roots of several key aspects of the Cold War aspect of the Middle East, which I think is a really underappreciated lens in which to kind of understand the 20th century, especially with the Middle Eastern conflicts. And so right now, as we finish one, we're already kind of working on the next one. So in November of this year, we're going to be opening America 250, working title. So what I'm going to walk you through right now is kind of our working set of drawings. So we're still developing ideas out. I'll kind of point out sort of what's going on in specific areas, anything that I'm kind of like especially excited about, or sort of how I thematically am approaching something. I kind of like conversational nature of these sort of presentations. So if you have thoughts, feelings, ideas, participation is kind of welcome and appreciated. There's some things that are like sort of more functional than exciting to look at. For example, the paint plan. So if you see me going through like several slides at a time, it's not because I'm keeping something from you, it's just because that part isn't especially exciting, but very functionally important for the people that are working on this project. So yeah, this is kind of the top-down view of our gallery. One of the nice things is that we're able to sort of gut the gallery when we're working on a project and change it based on flow and function. So this is sort of the start of our gallery over here. You can follow my obnoxiously large mouse on the screen, so we're all kind of talking about the same thing. Through this area right over here, and then sort of exiting through the hallway in the gift shop. And so really the way we were approaching this is, because America 250, there's a lot going on. And so we were really interested in kind of the character of the country and sort of what happened in the beginning, how it ends. None of these things are inevitable. And sort of based on these big moments in American history, character is really carved and shaped out through these moments of, either opportunity and or conflict, where the United States of, George Washington isn't quite what ends up happening, and things change and evolve. And if you ask George Washington, what kind of responsibility does the United States have to rebuild Europe after World War II, he might say something to the degree of, what are you talking about? So really, where the United States is in the world and how we understand ourselves kind of changes and evolves over a period of time through these moments. So you can see we sort of start with very briefly giving context to the colonial period. From there, we kind of get into what we're calling revolution and the radical experiment of kind of, functional Republican democracy in that regard. From there, we go to the Civil War and the growing pains of westward expansion. First question, go.
Sorry, just real quick. So we're looking at a diagram, but what's the scale on this? So how big are these rooms?
So in total, our gallery is 2,600 square feet.
So the entryway that you just described, how big would that be?
So this area right here, I would say, if you're making me do math first thing in the morning, I would say something to the degree of...
How about the size of this room, would you say?
I'd say 400 square feet, 350 square feet, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, in this area, it's really, just creating a foundation of the colonial period, of the idea of, Jamestown to the 13 colonies, really as a sort of a money-making venture in kind of like a larger British venture of, figuring out ways to monetize raw resources around the world. The United States is by no means kind of even the crown jewel in the British colonial empire at this point in time, but is obviously, through a period of time, a unique identity begins to form kind of in opposition to a subject of the British crown during this period. So you can see, just kind of, we usually do sort of top-down views. Giving areas sort of names is, functionally important to us, so we know from the team sort of what we're talking about. No artifacts here, but really just kind of getting people where they need to be and kind of avoiding the bottleneck.
Yeah, JP's got 9 kids and I got 11, so yeah, we need those big rooms.
Yeah. So this area is really where we start getting into the meat and potatoes of our story, which is revolution and the radical experiment. So just kind of highlighting some of the artifacts. And I think one of the things that I'm really fortunate to have is a lot of support to partner with outside institutions. And so one of the, if we're going into philosophy of museums, no matter how good a gallery is, the thing I'll always take away is an artifact that is engaging to me. And the thing about physical items, especially kind of in an increasingly digital world, is that a physical item proves that something happened. Just for example, when I was at the World War I Museum in Vienna, it was an amazing gallery, but they had the car that Franz Ferdinand was driving in, and that is the thing I will remember forever. Doesn't matter how good the gallery is. So in this particular area, we were able to partner with some private collections, the Massachusetts Historical Society, which has one of the best galleries I've seen in a while. Mount Vernon, which is obviously the home of George Washington, as well as Ross Perot, who had a really, really wonderful private collection. So in this case right here in the middle, I guess we learned something right now. So when you think of the Declaration of Independence in your head, the one that's in the National Archives in DC, you're not actually picturing the correct Declaration of Independence. That one was handwritten, very faded, it's hardly legible. President John Adams, to commemorate, I believe, the 15th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, has a really, really nice engraving made that are circulated to all of the surviving signers of the Declaration. So there's about 30 of these in existence, and it's called the Stone Declaration of Independence, named after the printer that worked on it. So these ones are really, really rare and in very, very high demand. So we're lucky enough to have one of these in our permanent collection through a donation of a patron, which was very, very generous. And so this one is like really, really exciting for us. We also have a cannonball from Lexington and Concord coming, which is awesome. We have some of the bullets that were fired in the Boston Massacre, which is really, really cool, as well as a Magna Carta that was commissioned for King George III, which is obviously creating the pedigree of democracy that kind of moves us towards the Constitution. Yes?
How do you decide what artifacts to use like an exhibit? You just
Yeah, that is a great question. Usually what I'm thinking of, I kind of start the artifact process first, because there's a tremendous amount of really exciting paperwork that has to be exchanged on humidity readings and how many lumens are the lights giving off, like how has your gallery been performing. So a lot of it is sort of creating relationships, and then also making sure that your gallery specs, so the Smithsonian gives you a thumbs up, we give them a thumbs up, and everyone is kind of doing what they need to do to make sure things are preserved. So thematically, obviously, I know I'm aiming towards a specific area. I know what that institution kind of has, and I really just kind of dive in. So I'll create a relationship and network. I'll kind of know the keywords that I'm interested in, but a lot of times I won't even know what I'm interested in until I really spend time understanding what they have. I guess like a great example of that is in the next section. I just got off a phone call 2 days ago with the Gettysburg Museum curator, and as I'm describing sort of what I'm interested in, which is sort of less of people's, like the bullets they would carry in their pockets, and I was more interested in kind of specifically looking for a human element. For example, I'm interested in somebody's glasses, because someone's glasses are a continuation of themselves. That's an object that they would carry with them all the time, and if they don't have it, they're where are my glasses? So that's an important object that creates a direct through line between humanity and event, in my opinion. So as I'm kind of describing these things, he goes, oh, well, we actually just got this item returned from another loan that's in great condition. We would feel comfortable using it. Do you want a bugle that was played? And to me, I wasn't asking that question, but I sort of framed it correctly, and that immediately pinged in my head, and I was like, yes, I want the bugle that was being played at Gettysburg. Because like, to me, the bugle, when you look at it, you hear it, it does a lot of things than just a singular item. So it's a combination of asking the right questions and understanding the right themes and letting somebody who knows more about something than you, like create those connections when they can. So it's sort of a combination of all of those things. And usually if you're excited by it, when it says it out loud, that means other people will also be excited by it.
Who's that guy? Oh, that's George Washington.
That is George Washington. So yeah, one of the items that we're bringing in is Gilbert Stuart is sort of one of the most famed American portrait artists in kind of this period of time. Ross Perot, who has been a wonderful partner for us. Obviously he is deceased, but the Ross Perot Collection and Trust.
Jason, for the sake of some in the room, who the heck is Ross Perot?
For us young people.
He's
Elected Bill Clinton.
yeah. I guess in 2 sentences, eccentric Texas billionaire.
Patriot.
Yeah, patriot, very curious. We sort of formed a relationship with him because we had done a prisoners of war exhibit, and that was like one of the things he was incredibly passionate about. But yeah, eccentric guy, wonderful American, collector of peculiar things, also presidential candidate.
And he gave us Hillary Clinton.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of pretty interesting parts about Ross Perot and kind of his imprint on history. So one of the items in his personal collection is this original Gilbert Stuart, which is, I believe, one of 6. And so like this is the most famed. Obviously, there's one in the National Portrait Gallery. There's, I think, 2 floating around in private collections, but these don't make the rounds all the time. And so this is one where we kind of like designed around the artifact because of how cool this is. Also, next to this one, we will be having one of the themes we're really interested in, kind of the juxtaposition between the monarchy that obviously we were trying to leave and kind of the imprint that George Washington had on the presidency. In particular, he sort of had a mandate at that point in time because he was a really popular guy. And he walked away after 2 terms. He didn't want to live in a fancy mansion. He was pretty interested in the aesthetics of his position. And, you know, rather than wearing a giant robe for Inauguration Day, he wore a brown suit. And it's like, you know, these are the things where it's like George Washington sort of set precedent moving forward. And so we have the original White House, well, it wasn't the White House China, it was the presidential mansion at that point in time, but the presidential mansion China, which is the opposite of ornate. It's so simple. And so those are like one of the things in this area that we're sort of teasing out. It's like rather than gold everywhere, it was kind of like the marble inlay of, you know, think the Lincoln Memorial, of like that style of architecture as opposed to Buckingham Palace, which is, you know, like dripping with being eccentric from, you know, the drapes all the way to the carpet. So like, yeah, it's like those sort of themes that we're interested in teasing out. So in this area right here, we're doing a nice fabricated area of the Boston Tea Party. We're gonna have an interactive where people can actually sort of dunk the tea into, you know, it's not water because you can't have, you know, moisture in museum galleries. You guys all know that. But it's sort of like creating, you know, something very simple and engaging, both for, you know, children and for adults. There has been a move in kind of history galleries, especially in the last 10 years or so, to kind of move towards really digital technology of like touch screens. I hate that. In particular, I spend a lot of time on my phone, and I know everybody does, and to me, a touchscreen feels like work. And so I'm always trying to move as much as possible sort of towards analog technology. Like how do you pull a lever? How do you push a button? How do you do a switch? And, you know, number one, it's period specific. And number two, the tactile aspect I think is very, very engaging for people. So I always try to push and move towards that as often as I can.
Will we have a choice between green and black tea when we do that?
I will say in your imagination, it can be whatever color you want the tea to be. And so yeah, this was kind of a cool way to really like thematically tease an area out as well as kind of create an interactive. And then yeah, from here, we're sort of moving on to the gallery. You can see we've been selecting the graphics and the text. We're sort of moving towards the Treaty of Paris, into the drafting of the Constitution, and obviously the inciting part is that content on the way people were governed had existed before, but the exceptional thing is the so what of codifying a functional government that can change and evolve based on the needs of human peoples and doing it in a way that it has endured for a long period of time. So much so that, you know, other countries modeled their constitution after our constitution, and kind of the forward-thinking genius of that document, and a document that can functionally change and evolve based on needs. And then from there, we get into the Civil War and growing pains area. And obviously, as the country is expanding, the sort of the scars of this thing are sort of becoming more apparent and showing a lot more. And as everything moves west, a lot of these discontents are kind of inflamed. And then you really get to ask yourself, you know, how much does you know, a merchant from Massachusetts now have in common with somebody from the Ohio Valley? And, you know, a lot of these themes are sort of really teased out to the brink during the Civil War period. Yeah.
You have a great Abe Lincoln impersonator. Is he still around? Is that somebody you're going to use as part of an interactive?
So I usually try to stay in my lane. I obviously don't have the means to hire an Abe Lincoln impersonator to sit there 8 hours a day. We do presidential impersonator days, and the local Abe Lincoln, this guy is world class. This guy was born to play Abraham Lincoln. It's absolutely wild. If you get an opportunity to go to Civil War days in Huntington Beach, which they do once a year, he's always there doing the Gettysburg Address, and he will not break character for any which way. He will be coming. We've been talking about the events around it, and he will definitely be coming for one of the days. And if you haven't got the opportunity, what a real treat this guy is.
When are Civil War days?
I want to say they do it in September every year. It's through the Huntington Beach Public Library. And if you just give a Google to Civil War Days, they're well attended, well funded. They do a full reenactment of a fake Civil War battle of whatever the little lake is right behind the Huntington Beach Public Library. It's really, really fun to go out. And obviously, you know, everyone there is leaning in so hard, that's what makes it fun, right? So from an artifact perspective, we have a bunch of items from soldiers that fought at Gettysburg here. We have some personal items of Abraham Lincoln, both some letters he exchanged with General future President Ulysses S. Grant, and kind of the tail end of the war. We have his hat coming, which was like a historical bucket list that I got to check off. Even through gloves, to be able to touch one of Abraham Lincoln's hat is just like unreal. And then kind of moving into this area over here, we have some of the original telegrams for the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, which is obviously a really important theme because as we go west, increased technology, both in terms of communication and transportation, allows sort of like a functioning relationship to exist between people that live very, very far away, which, you know, again, that creates a connection between people in California and Maine, because otherwise, what do you have in common if you can't talk and communicate and know what's going on with each other?
You know, what would be good in this area is getting a piece of coal from Black Star Canyon.
So that's actually really interesting because the mining, so what you're looking at, the rudimentary drawings right here is of the structure of Sutter's Mill. And obviously one of the things I'm interested in is the gold aspect of it, but I'm also interested in the pivot of like the gold that people weren't looking for. You know, for example, the raw materials of borax in the Death Valley Basin area, the mining that exists in Southern California, the kind of the innovation of like genes, for example, of kind of like that sort of ingenuity that exists in enriching. And I also really enjoy any kind of local connection that I can make. I know that the mining company disbanded that was going in the Black Star Canyon area, but I imagine that Orange County Parks, I'm speaking out loud now, that is a great observation. I've just made a mental note.
We have a mine on our premises, that's why.
Oh, okay. Well, do you guys got some coal for me? And also just pointing out, you'll notice for the younger folks, you'll notice pictures of the Pokemon Mew on the wall quite frequently. That is to inform me and the designers that that graphic has not been selected yet. So it's like very aggressively out of place. We had run into a problem where if we put placeholders, sometimes we would get the crosshairs and be like, oh, we have selected something. So we usually select some kind of campy graphic to be like, you haven't made this selection yet, and you can't forget it because there's a Mew on the wall right there. So this isn't a museum about Pokemon Mew.
It's one of those touchscreen.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I believe in. It's touchscreens on the wall, as much touchscreens as possible, right? So kind of pivoting forward, we're getting into the Second Industrial Revolution and World War I, World War II. And so it's really during this period, Number one, that the United States becomes really, really, really good at making stuff. Better than almost anywhere else in the world. That gives us a really big competitive advantage because we are so good at making stuff. And we're also coming up with really cool, interesting ideas about what to make. In a world that had been kind of dominated by Europe for a very, very long time, in the wake of World War I and World War II, there is a very, very large power vacuum that occurs. And the United States kind of is in a natural position to occupy this power vacuum during this period and operate from a position of leadership. And this is really, outside of the personal character, this is where the United States kind of takes on more global responsibility. As far as, what kind of impression and responsibility does the United States have in a global world order? In particular, at this point, we sort of had a northern hemisphere strategy, if you can call it that, a northern western. It's you sort of stay on your side, we sort of stay on our side, and it's during this period the United States has the resources and kind of the moral resolve to kind of make a larger impression on the world for the first time. So, this is obviously a very transformative time period. One of the more exciting ones, and kind of going back to this gentleman's question, as far as how do you know what you're asking for? So I had been interested and started a conversation with the Henry Ford Museum, which is in Michigan, right outside of Detroit. And I knew, obviously, that there is sort of an assembly line part to our conversation, right? Is that the assembly line, the famous Henry Ford, you can have any color you want as long as that color is black. And the idea of being able to make and produce cars really not only shows American ingenuity, but also creates a consumer market for things and changes the way mobility happens, and it's representative of kind of a larger happenings. So as I went to the Henry Ford Museum, and I learned pretty early that if I want to be treated well, that doing a little FaceTime, showing up, saying, hey, my name's Jason, how are you? Shaking hands, walking through their gallery, seeing what's compelling and interesting to me. I flew out to Michigan to go through their gallery, to meet with their curator to see what part of the collection I was interested in. And it turns out that Thomas Edison gave a large amount of his collection to Henry Ford because they were very good friends. So I obviously am interested in Thomas Edison's collection. So I started going around, I started asking the right questions. And so some of the items we're bringing in is the original light bulb, one of 30 that was submitted for patent for the light bulb patent. The original sort of spec of the phonograph machine, because obviously Edison doesn't just make the light bulb. There's a lot of other things that the Edison labs are creating at this point in time. And one of the ones that I didn't even know I was interested in until I saw what it was think of the old timey stamp cards where you show up to work and hit a thing and it tells you what time you got in there. So Thomas Edison, even in his own laboratory, was clocking in and out every single day. And there was, I think they had 9 or 10 of these that somehow, made it for 100 and something years. So in a single week, he clocked in 108 hours. And, he's the boss. His name is on the building, and he still is creating the habit of clocking in and out every single day. So that's one where I go, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I want that. That tells the story, right? In this area right here, obviously that kind of informed our design because we had the opportunity to bring in something cool, and it was a vehicle to tell our story. And then from here, we kind of are creating a through line of another interactive over here. There's, think of a Frankenstein switch. It's called a knife switch of sort of like that, yeah, exactly, the breaker completer. And obviously those switches are incredibly dramatic. So I mean, obviously my ears perk up when I'm thinking about this, and I'm just like, that's the kind of switch I want to bring in. So there's going to be a 3 knife switch over here, and kind of one of them turns on the early camera to kind of show that sort of rudimentary aspect, because the Edison company was into film. Turns on an early phonograph, and very famously the first recording is him saying Mary had a little lamb. very cool, innovative stuff. And then the last one sort of is going to light the New York skyline, because we kind of have a time lapse of the New York skyline on the following wall, because he very dramatically gets the contract for New York City to build the grid on New Year's Eve. Obviously, he's a businessman as well. He creates a demonstration of a single city block and like puts the breaker on. The lights turn on and essentially is like invites everyone that needs to be there. And they're like, okay, this is the future. You have the contract for the entire city of New York. And so he starts building it out. So sort of creating the through line between the Menlo Park Lab, which is kind of fun because it sort of has a similar story to Apple, if you need something to compare it to, where like they were operating out of their garage for like 4 years longer than they absolutely should have. And he's like, fine, I'll get an office building. So the idea of kind of like the ingenuity and creativity of the Menlo Park Laboratory having such a big impression on New York City, which is, a very famous city in the United States. That through line was very, very interesting to me.
So that, of course, is the genesis of why Times Square is where it is.
Yeah.
Is that kind of why it's there like that?
Yeah, well, I think there's several reasons for it, both from a functionality perspective, but yeah, there was some areas where they were targeting to build the grid first, just because it made the most sense to do that. And
You
then
pay the electric bill too.
yeah, and then again, they have to pay the electric bill, so you got to come up with fun, interesting, creative ways to make money for said electric bill for the first time. And so yeah, so basically it's going to slowly, through a CNC machine with a vague outline, sort of light up the windows in each particular area. And again, we're sort of starting the story of the cityscape can also be sort of like the lapse of, or I guess like the march of time. So we're kind of starting with the early brownstones of like the 19, and one of the things I was incredibly interested in this period is how fast the world is changing. And like there are people that, were using horse and buggy in the 1890s that were also there for the World War II victory parade, where there is a skyscraper and television cameras. So like the transformation that occurs during this period, there's times where you're like, life is changing so fast for us. Imagine this, right? It's crazy to think about. And so yeah, over here is sort of where we get to our World War I, World War II area. And we're not telling the story of World War II, or World War I, which is a gallery in itself. We're really interested in sort of the American perspective, both in how it sort of changes the dynamic at home during these periods, and also the way the United States kind of projects abroad. So obviously the failed League of Nations into the United Nations, the Marshall Plan, D-Day, the United States kind of having an impression in that way. And then this section right here is what we're calling the American National Exhibition. I kind of live in the Cold War sort of all year long, just because of the nature of the area I study. We do exhibits on the arms race, we do exhibits on Vietnam, on POWs, on this period a lot. And so we were trying to figure out how to do it differently or to frame it differently. And also, there's a lot of very heavy content up until this point. So there's a kind of for the young folks, you might not know it. So there's a really famous exchange when Richard Nixon is the vice president of the United States with the Soviet premier Nikita Khrushchev, called the Kitchen Debates. They used to do these things called like world fairs or cultural exhibitions, where they would pick a city. Think of the Space Needle in Seattle as a perfect example, where it was kind of like the Olympics, and every country would go and build an exhibition booth where they would be like, we are Ecuador, and this is the best stuff we're doing right now. We are, Morocco, this is what we're doing. And everyone gets an opportunity to kind of showcase their culture, what they're building, what they're working on, et cetera. So the US and the Soviet Union used to do these exact things, where they would build cultural exchanges of being like, we are the Soviet Union, look at how great our literature is. We are the United States, look at how awesome the microwave is. And really, what I think from a long-term perspective, why I gravitated towards the Cold War as a topic to live in year long is that before, the United States wasn't interested in being like, we need the Germans to love Elvis Presley. It's so important to us. No, it was like, we need to get in there. We're doing what we have to do. But, during the Cold War, change shifts in the way we sort of think about, projecting power, where we want them to think our stuff is better, which is very, very interesting and very, very unique to this period. We didn't want to win. We wanted them to know that we had better movies, better TV, our carpets that we made were better. And that, obviously creates a really interesting opportunity to frame the Cold War in a different way. So we really went in on the kitchen debate, which is at this, and this was an opportunity to kind of let the topic breathe a little bit more and sort of change the way we're approaching it. We're calling it basically, the soft power competition of the Cold War, which is, sort of the historical speak of sort of how you frame that kind of stuff.
Are you able to feature the interplay at that time? And got to 1980, and you've got both, John Paul the Great, you've got Thatcher, you've got Lech Walesa, you've got basically why the Soviet Union fell. Is that out of your purview? Is that something you're going to try?
Yeah, so you're asking a very interesting question, which is, a museum exhibit requires bookends, and where do you put the bookends? Especially in a story that I currently live in the United States. You guys also live in the United States, I imagine. So the story is not done today. So where do you finish it? We are also, especially in the Middle East exhibit, that can get really messy really quick. While I definitely have opinions about contemporary politics, and I think that they're informed relatively well based on, my historical understanding of things and framing of most everything of how I think about it. I'm in the history business. And I try to stay in the history business so I don't get yelled at because otherwise I would get yelled at because people have very strong opinions. So for this, so we actually touched on that exact thing we did a Cold War exhibit, and the crumbling of the Berlin Wall. That specific period was perfect because the actual end of the Cold War is a really slow burn of economic reform, and 5 Soviet leaders, sort of interchangeably fighting for a power dynamic, with all the Soviet republics slowly peeling off over a period of 7 to 8 years. For lack of it's not very exciting. There's not a cool exclamation mark. It's and slowly things changed and become less functional till things sort of changed so much that they didn't look the same anymore. Is sort of how that happened. For this exhibit in particular, the bicentennial seemed like a great ending point. So we sort of end in 1976 because you got to pick something, right? So that's sort of what we tethered it to. So that's outside of the scope, but that is a topic that we have talked about in other exhibits. So yeah, we sort of have the kitchen area, which is part of the exhibit, the living room area, which is sort of what we're saying, America consumes. We're sort of modeling after what they were doing in the exhibit. So this is an area where we get to talk about baseball and kind of rock and roll music, Elvis Presley. We got early Jackie Robinson stuff coming in and kind of entertainment as a vehicle for change. In this area is the broadcasting studio, where we kind of talk about the projection of America through the things we're making in movie studios. We have Marilyn Monroe's gloves coming from the Smithsonian, the Fonz's jacket, which is something I was especially excited about. And then in this area over here is sort of the space race and aeronautics, but sort of from a non-military perspective, because obviously that soft power competition, has a military dynamic, but isn't really defined by it. And also, one thing I've learned is that people like space stuff. So yeah, we have kind of early Apollo 11 stuff coming in, moon rocks, which is always a hit. Early freeze-dried food, some items from Boeing that really highlight it, as well as a piece of the airplane that the Wright brothers flew in North Carolina, which again, that is when I had that opportunity. It's like, all right, well, we have, an aeronautics component now, because that's like too cool to skip out on, right? Final area, and I know we're pressed for time, so I'll be sensitive on that. And also, this is the area that we're still thematically teasing out, is the bicentennial area. We're sort of framing this kind of through like Main Street USA Parade. So it's just a really, really cool way to end it. A lot of the footage is just like really, really compelling. And the US kind of went all out as far as the programming was concerned. So there's like, I don't know if you guys know Old Ironsides, but it's kind of like the flagship for the United States Navy that I think is from the War of 1812 that's still in commission, and they'll bring it out. So they like brought out Old Ironsides. We flew over the original Magna Carta. We had like the Queen of England over for a state visit. Like all sorts of cool sort of celebratory things occurred in 1976. And again, you need somewhere to end. That's what we picked. And then we're sort of framing it right now through like sort of small shops. We actually was taking reference photographs in Old Town Orange the other day as far as how we want it to functionally feel. And again, I like to do calls to any kind of local history we can. So that is sort of how this area is going to end up. Yes.
Well, I mean, you even have USA Today on. So
Yeah. So I really enjoy the details. And so to me, this was a great way to not only put a newspaper that gives context to that area for of like what is happening, so I don't have to necessarily throw it on a panel. But yeah, again, that is something that like a physical thing that puts you in a place really, really, really well. So it's like, we're gonna have all sorts of like, period specific posters. They did a lot of concerts at that point in time of the bicentennial era. That's like, the Ramones do a, America 200 concert, that kind of stuff. And the footage is great. The visuals are great. It's, early enough that people will understand the people being talked about, even the younger folks. And it just seemed like the right place to end. From there, you can see that we're building that area out. We're also doing like a cool graphic of the Prado Dam, if you've ever driven. Yeah, that was one where I like, when I was younger, I would drive by it all the time and I was like, oh, that's what that is. That was a bicentennial project. And I'm very, very happy that they finally got the sort of political clout and the funding to give that thing a facelift, because it needed it really, really badly. So yeah, that's just kind of personal. It has nothing to do with my exhibit as a whole. And then from there, sort of exit through the gift shop. I always buy a mug for my exhibits. It's the one I keep. So yeah, that's kind of, we're doing a bunch of programming. We have a speaker series coming on. We're doing, presidential reenactment, sort of all the way to kind of hard-hitting like policy conversations everywhere in between. Right now, I'm pretty, singular and focused, so I try not to pay attention to too much of those conversations, but we meet and kind of discuss, because I'm only one piece, I'm the special exhibit piece in a much larger thing, which is like, there's a civics component of it that we're programming around, there's speakers, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, that's kind of my little corner of the Nixon Library of our America 250 initiative.
Jason Schwartz, thank you.